Good morning and welcome to this thought for the day for Easter Monday. My name is Nick and it's good to be back giving a thought for the day after an absence of quite a few months. Caused really because I have been having some endlessly lengthy and complicated dental work, and I thought I would have a pause until I was able to smile broadly and look quite normal. A slight delay has led to another month of waiting, but I'm confident that next time I do a thought for the day, I'll be able to give a large smile and look perfectly normal. The passage I've taken for today's thought comes from Mark's Gospel, chapter 16, starting at the first verse, and it's taking us to that miraculous moment when the women came to the tomb for the first time, the day after his crucifixion, and hear the extraordinary news that Jesus has been raised from the dead. So here is the passage, Mark chapter 16, starting at verse 1. I'm reading from the NIV version. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See, the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. This is a really well-known and, of course, extraordinary passage. But as so often with passages that are familiar to us, there is so much detail that we can often miss. And for me, one of those was the mention of Salome. Of course not, as it turns out, the daughter of Herodias, whose captivating dancing led, sadly, to the death of John the Baptist, to fulfill Herod's promise that anything she asked for would be granted. Very little is known of this particular Salome, but there's a body of evidence that suggests that she may well have been, probably was, the sister of Jesus' mother Mary, and therefore wife of Zebedee and mother to James and John. So these women came with spices to properly anoint Jesus' body with sorrowful love, and Salome was carrying the myrrh. The day before, Nicodemus and Joseph had only prepared Jesus' body in some haste after it had been released to them so that they could place Jesus in a tomb. So we picture the women arriving very early in the morning, confused, distressed, and what do they find? Even worse than they imagined, in a way, was the fact that the stone had been rolled away. They were too late. So picture the desperation, the confusion, the loss, the sorrow, the sadness. Very hesitantly, and probably after some time of talking together and whatever should they do, they entered the tomb. And there they see what was clearly an angel, a young man dressed in radiant white, sitting there, who greeted them with the astonishing news that Jesus had risen from the dead, and was no longer there. He then tells them to find the disciples and tell them, but especially Peter, that Jesus has gone to Galilee, where they may find him. So why this mention of Peter, I wonder? Well, maybe, I think, because if we think of the deep shame, the regret, the humiliation, the anger Peter had for himself, for so publicly denying his Saviour, after the vehement proclamation and promise that he would follow him whatever the cost. And then notice verse 8 that says, they said nothing because they were afraid. Was this perhaps because they thought no one would believe them, or maybe they would get into trouble? And they still didn't believe until Jesus appeared first to Mary, and then later when he appeared to the two disciples walking on their way to Emmaus, and having spent time with them, then they realized the truth, that Jesus had risen, and they rushed back to all the disciples. And we know the wonderful events that followed from there. So, what is the thought and the lesson that we can learn from all of this, I wonder? For me, I think it is to never, ever underestimate what Jesus can do. And when the extraordinary happens through him, we mustn't fear being disbelieved. But I need to have the courage to share with others how Jesus is at work in my life. So my prayer for today is that we may become more confident in the power of Jesus to transform our life, whatever the situation. And may this equip us to serve him with greater confidence and resolve. After all, as it's so frequently been said, we may be the only Bible that some people will ever read. So may this day be a day of blessing and encouragement for us to acknowledge and declare that Jesus is the ruler of our lives. Bless you.